We are now joined by the head coach of the LSU Tigers, Coach Brian Kelly. Coach, appreciate you making some time. How are we doing today?
Doing great. Doing great. We get to talk football. It's always good instead of talking about everything else. So I always like to make time for these conversations.
Absolutely. We appreciate you making time. What has the focus been like for you since y'all finished up the bowl game and then got into winter conditioning? Like you said, about to start playing the game again in the spring.
Yeah, so obviously, as you can imagine, that December period was like juggling, three things at once. You wanted to get your signing period complete with your freshmen. Then you had the transfer portal, obviously, that was very important. And you had to prepare your football team, certainly for your bowl games or playoffs or conference championships, whatever they may be. Once we're able to get through all that, the focus really then became 24s, 25s. And then when your team got back on campus, certainly your focus became your football team that was here. So we've been able to shift the gears. And now tomorrow we start our first spring practice. So you can imagine 24, 25s, junior days, trying to get ahead of that. And then now really focus on the guys that are on campus.
And when you look at 2022, I mean, you guys had a ton of success. It seemed like almost instantly. How were you able to do so much in year one at LSU?
Well, I think we got incredible buy-in. Look, I mean, this is a program that's had great success and certainly a couple of down years, but you had a lot of pride, a lot of tradition in the program. We just needed to recalibrate and set the standards where they needed to be. So the standards were recalibrated, and we became very demanding, not demeaning, but certainly demanding, and the players wanted that. They come to LSU wanting to win championships, so we were able to get them to where those standards became much more familiar. Now it was a matter of consistency. We weren't as consistent as we would have liked, but we've set a really good foundation for where we want to go from year one to year two.
And personally, I mean, I've loved hearing you talking about that, just talking about the standards and structure and culture that you're bringing to LSU. What are those structures that you have in place for your football team?
Well, it's how you do things. It's how you think, first of all, your mindset. And that starts with habits. And, you got choices to make, right? You can be average at what you do. You can be good at what you do. You can be elite. And we want to be elite at what we do. And that's hard to be elite. It's really hard to do things the right way every day, not just some of the time, but all the time. And when I say elite, I'm talking about going to class, doing the little things the right way, getting sleep, eating the right way, being early to everything. And so all of those things, it takes a commitment to being elite, and that's hard, or everybody would do that. And so that's the process that these guys now have immersed themselves in. We had some bad habits, and so we've had to recreate those habits on a day-to-day basis, and they're working towards it. We're not there yet. This is not a finished product, and I don't know if it ever is, but we're working towards that every day.
But a really phenomenal product in 2022, playing for an SEC title. And that was nothing that was new to you in terms of success on the field with all the great things you did at Notre Dame. How would you say your style has adapted going from South Bend to Louisiana?
I think the process is very similar in terms of, building habits and consistency and way we do things. Recruiting is totally different down here in the sense that, you're much more engaged from the very beginning, which I love, right? I mean, I've had everybody over my house. I mean, I'm less than a mile from campus. I'm not in a plane, half the year. A long trip for me is up to Ruston, and that's a lot different than having to be on the West Coast and then, LA and then New Jersey and Texas. That's a hard road. And so you really get to build stronger relationships with the coaches, especially in the state of Louisiana, because you're going to be in that school every single year, and you build that relationship. And so recruiting is just different from that perspective. And I think you can build stronger relationships and a trust factor that allows you to get that young man to come to LSU.
And that's one thing I've heard you talk about extensively is, hey, we are going to recruit Louisiana well. I believe you signed somewhere in the range of double-digit guys from the boot. Why is that so important to you and your success at LSU?
Well, first and foremost, it's outstanding football. Look, if it if the, if we didn't have the history and the players in this state, that's a stump speech, right? You're just it sounds good. But there are players here in the state of Louisiana, and there are a lot of good players that have left this state that are playing against us. So to me, it became we need to pull our base and we need to do a better job in the state of Louisiana first and foremost, and then we'll spread out. I mean, the contiguous states are great states, obviously Texas and obviously Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida are all great states for us, but we need to pull Louisiana first and foremost. So it was an effort that I thought we needed to make. You can see that in the tenor relative to who I hired amongst my staff. They have roots here in the state of Louisiana, and we backed it up that way.
And we're looking forward to this year's team. Winter conditioning is sort of like that dues paying period of the college football calendar where there's not a lot of glitz and glamour. There's not a lot of hype videos going on. Who impressed you in terms of this winter conditioning phase within your locker room currently?
I think some of our freshman defensive linemen, came in and were pretty impressive. You never know. Defensive linemen, it's one of those things that they, certainly have the measurables, but how are they going to stack up? Paxton Howard, Deshaun Womack, both of those guys early on have the look that they have certainly the ability to compete right away. We'll see here over the next couple of weeks in spring practice, when we put the pads on, but they certainly have a look. Javion Toviano, as a defensive back, certainly has that athletic ability and the way he handles himself. I think, Yates, the defensive back from Texas, these guys are elite athletes, and you can see it in their confidence level is really high as well. And those guys really kind of stand out to me from a defensive perspective, that they have a chance to come in and at least show themselves in the spring so we can evaluate them clearly as to whether they're ready to play or not.
And looking on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, two, from the outside looking in at least, really good options at quarterback with Garrett Nussmeier and Jayden Daniels. How is your staff going to approach that quarterback room during the spring?
Well, I think first and foremost, the improvement level, was great for Jayden Daniels. And he also saw that he could get better here at LSU. And so we're grateful that he feels that way and that he has the opinion that he has things to work on as well, right? It takes two to work together in this situation. So this spring, but before this spring, he saw the need to really work on some things in film study and understanding, his progressions. Now he gets to go on the field and put those things together. He made progress, as we talked about, but I think we got to see him push the ball down the field, be a little bit more aggressive. And those are the things he'll get a chance to work on. Garrett Nussmeier, we got a chance to see him in the SEC championship game. He's a guy that can do a lot of things. We need to keep an open mind. We got to give him some work with the first team as well as we continue to develop him because certainly he has the tools as well. So, Jayden's our starter. But Garrett Nussmeier needs to continue to grow, and you can't grow if you're just getting second team reps. You've got to be able to give him an opportunity to go out there and show himself as well.
And one guy who seemed like he took on a ton of growth in 2022 was Harold Perkins. What was the reason for him having such a strong back half of the season? And then what are your expectations for him heading into spring football in 2023?
Well, he's an elite athlete, certainly. And I think he takes care of himself. He's a guy that sleeps and eats and does all the right things away from the football center as well. And that's going to be more and more important as we go through and we add playoffs in 24. You're talking about 16, 17 game schedules. The guys that don't take care of themselves, they're going to break down later in the season. And Harold Perkins is a guy that took care of himself and was able to kind of slingshot himself later in the season into playing really good football as well. The second point to that is Matt House did a great job of moving him around and putting him in positions to be successful. So, one, you get great athletes, right? But two, you got to put them in positions to succeed. And I think both of those things happened with Harold Perkins.
I mean, Tasmanian Devil, he was must-see TV on the defensive side of the football. So every Saturday I was keeping my eyes on 40, which is a whole lot of fun. Coach, when you look to 2023, what is the biggest change you're expecting from your team going into your second year at LSU?
I think we're going to have a little bit more depth. I think that was really evident that, as the season went on, we were certainly taxed in many areas. I think it showed itself particularly on the defensive side of the ball. We just did not have the numbers. And as you know, the story is well chronicled. We had about 38, 39 scholarship players. It is what it is, right? But that started to show itself later in the season, not having the kind of depth that we had. So having more depth is going to be an enhanced special teams units. It's going to allow us to obviously get guys in and out of games and be fresher as we get into the later portion of our season, because we weren't as consistent as I would have liked later in the season.
Coach, you have been around the game and seen a ton of different things throughout college football. But from the outside looking in, it just seems like LSU is just a little bit different than maybe any other program in the country. What makes LSU, in your mind, such a special place?
Well, I think, first of all, it is a part of the country where football is just revered. And it starts at the high school ranks where kids grow up and they just want to play for LSU. It's a flagship. I think there's only a couple of state universities, maybe Ohio State's one of them, LSU. There's only a few in the country where there is that incredible connection with their state and the flagship university and the game of football. I think, secondly, the great tradition of LSU football, national championships, but guys in the NFL. I think that connection, and I think finally, the venue where college football is played. Tiger Stadium is unlike many places, and I think that was seen. Look, really, does the hype ever live up to what it really is? And for me, being in it for 3 decades, I thought it was the hype, but the Alabama LSU game lived up to the hype. The atmosphere, just the feeling in that stadium is quite unique. It is like nothing I've ever experienced. So I think the stadium, the state, football itself, you got to throw the food in there too. The food's amazing. Come on. It's like nothing else. I think you put all those things together, it makes it pretty unique down here in Baton Rouge.
Without a doubt. Well, Coach, we appreciate you making time. Excited to watch y'all get after it in the spring, and definitely have plans to make it down to Death Valley at some point and sample the football as well as the food. But appreciate your time.
And the tailgating. You got to tailgate, no doubt.
Absolutely. Thanks, Coach.